Hello everyone, and welcome to the Great Lakes Coastal Wetland Decision Support Tools demonstration hosted by the Upper Midwest and Great Lakes LCC. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us today. My name is Dave Case with DJ Case & Associates, and I'll be facilitating the webinar today. We're providing communication support to the LCC, and we also have Rick Clausen and Chaz Hartman on board today as well. Just brief background on how these tools came to be. Many of the agencies and NGOs and folks from universities, many of you on the call have worked for decades to restore, enhance, and protect coastal wetlands, but success really requires a process for identifying goals and strategies that help practitioners apply conservation actions to the highest priority locations. So to help fill that need, the Upper Midwest and Great Lakes LCC has worked to unify federal and state agencies and NGOs. They formed a coastal conservation working group last year, and that group has begun to develop a landscape conservation design process. That process started with setting targets and goals through partnership engagement, including a couple of workshops that I know many of you attended, and that led to the establishment of a pilot landscape conservation design, or LCD, area from Saginaw Bay, Michigan, down to Western Lake Erie. The Great Lakes Restoration Initiative played a key role in gathering data in the pilot area, and now the next step in the process is to launch these tools, which we're going to cover today. And those tools act as a bridge between those data and decision makers. So that brings us to today and really places the next step in your hands. The Coastal Conservation Working Group hopes you'll use these tools to guide on-the-ground implementation of restoration projects so that the impact of each effort in the pilot area is maximized and can be prioritized in a cost-effective manner. Special thanks to Tara Edwards and the staff at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service National Conservation Training Center for supplying the meeting room technology that we're all using today. If you're not familiar with the meeting tool, Adobe Connect, just a couple of things to key you into some of the features. There are several ways to participate in today's meeting. First, we'll have a Q&A window or pods on screen for you to submit your questions and feedback throughout the event. Those comments and questions won't be visible to everyone else, but will go directly to the host and the presenters to review. And we'll try our best to respond to as many of those as we can during the event. Secondly, also watch for chat windows. From time to time, we'll pop on a window and ask a question for you all to respond to, kind of in real time. So just click into the response area to type in the response and hit submit. In chat windows, your response, along with everyone else's, will be shared and visible to everyone. Next, we'll have several presentation materials to share, PowerPoints, live screen share, and those kinds of things. Whenever you see content like that, you'll also see a full screen button on that pod. It looks like 4 arrows pointing or exploding outward, and so if you want to view the information more closely, simply click on that full screen button and it'll expand it to fill your entire screen. And then to minimize it and go back to the regular window, just press on that same function again, or hit escape, and you'll see everything in the meeting room once again. Hopefully you took a moment to test your internet connection with the link that was sent over with your confirmation email. But in the rare instance you might encounter problems viewing today's materials due to a failed connection or whatever it might be, please be aware that you can download the presentation files that you'll see and follow along that way if necessary. So if you need to download those and just follow along with the presentations, you can do that. You should have received a link to a page on the Upper Midwest and Great Lakes website where those files can be accessed anytime. And you can also find that in the share pod in this meeting room. Lastly, in terms of introductions, today's event is being recorded, so after everything is concluded, we'll post the recording along with the files that used today, so you can pull those up and share those with others. But now on to the reason everyone is here today. The Coastal Conservation Working Group, which is headed by Heather Sterrett with the Great Lakes Regional Lead. She is the Great Lakes Regional Lead at NOAA's Office for Coastal Management, and Christy DeLoria, Coastal Program Coordinator with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, worked to assemble teams to develop both of the tools that we're going to review today. And so they're really eager to present them and to get your input on ways to approve those. Today he'll be hearing from the project leads for both teams. Our first presenter is Kurt Kowalski. Kurt is a research ecologist with the U.S. Geological Survey, and we'll be talking today about the Great Lakes Coastal Wetland Restoration Assessments. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kurt.
Hey, thank you, Dave. I appreciate that. Welcome, everybody. We appreciate you taking the time to learn about our analysis a bit and the mapping tools that we've developed. We're excited to share them with you. I'm going to start this webinar off with this cool image of the Great Lakes. It's a digital elevation model that shows higher elevations in kind of the rusty red color and the lower elevations in blue, with current lake levels falling in some of the darkest blue areas. So lots of really neat things to look at in this image, but I want to focus your attention on the three bays. Western Lake Erie down to the south, Saginaw Bay in the middle, and then Green Bay pointing to there off to the left. These are the low elevation gradient glacial lake plains that once supported extensive coastal and inland wetlands. Of course, wetlands mean nutrient-rich soils, so extensive draining led to very productive agricultural lands. Now, with the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative and a broader effort to restore these coastal wetlands, these and similar areas offer a great opportunity for restoration at the landscape scale. So this is really the context in which we started our effort to identify potential coastal wetland restoration sites by creating a transferable restorability index for the basin. So these data can be a critical supplement to the other information going into the decision about what sites to restore. So again, I'm Bert Kowalski, a research wetland ecologist at the USGS Great Lakes Science Center in Ann Arbor, Michigan. My colleague Justin Saarinen, a research scientist from New College of Florida, and I have been working on this since 2013, primarily with support from USGS, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, and the Upper Midwest Great Lakes LCC. I also want to give a big acknowledgement to our colleagues at the USGS Web Informatics and Mapping Office in Middleton, Wisconsin, who did all the heavy lifting on the online mapping applications that I'm going to demo later. So today, I'm going to show you a few slides here to help you understand the data and the mapper that we produced, and then do a live demo of the product to help you get to know how to use it a little bit more. So I'm going to start off here with this image showing a fairly common landscape in the basin. This particular tributary is the Toussaint River entering Lake Erie off to the east there. You can see diked wetlands near the lake out over here, and agricultural lands dominating the inland landscape. So if you're a resource manager charged with identifying sites on this landscape that could easily be restored to coastal wetland habitat, how would you know where to look? How could we find the areas that historically were coastal wetlands and then objectively prioritize them according to their ability to be restored? Which of these parcels are kind of the low-hanging fruit that might give the most bang for the restoration buck? Well, some of these might say are fairly easy. You might look towards the diked wetlands out here near Lake Erie, but how about some of these farm fields? Or how about some parks or recreation areas that might be in the area you're looking at? So answers to these questions are going to help managers and planners make decisions about which parcels and which areas to implement restoration activities at, such that objectives are met both at that parcel scale and the larger landscape scale. So this is the type of problem that Justin and I have been working on. So let's take a look at an example of this situation from Western Lake Erie here. This is the Blousy Tract on the Toussaint River, for those of you that know the area. This 2009 image highlights a parcel that looks like so many others in this agriculture-dominated landscape. So if you're new to the area, how would you know that it could be restored pretty easily back to a coastal wetland state? How could you then compare this particular parcel with so many others along this section of the river or across the landscape? So our project titled Guiding Coastal Great Lakes Wetlands Restoration Through Geodesign is tackling this problem. In this context, geodesign is the integrated use of geospatial and many other data types in the planning and decision-making process to make a built landscape better. So we completed the analysis on coastal wetlands in 3 geographies contained within the LCC pilot area. We have Western Lake Erie down here outlined in blue, the connecting river systems outlined in red, and what we're calling the Saginaw Bay restoration assessment outlined in orange. So given the tools and data, what do we mean by restorable wetlands? Well, in the Great Lakes, a wetland is only classified as coastal if it has a hydrologic connection and is influenced by one of the 5 Great Lakes or connecting river systems. Therefore, wetlands or other areas that can be connected to a lake are considered restorable to coastal wetland habitat. which means that the easier it is to reconnect a wetland, the more restorable we might consider it. So areas were considered restorable to a coastal wetland if they were classified as having hydric soils or wet under historical lake level patterns. I'll talk about that more in a little bit. And the supported wetland vegetation. They were near waterways connected to a lake and were near conservation recreation areas. They also were considered more restorable if they were classified as less developed lands, like golf courses or agricultural fields, which were differentiated from areas covered by an impervious surface. So the data that go into this tool heavily drive the output. So let's talk about these inputs. We used 6 parameters and a mask to create our restorability index, and all the data that we used were from publicly available data sets. Parameter 1, we're calling parameter 1, identified wet areas using LIDAR data, so these are remotely sensed elevation data, and bathymetric data from USGS, as well as 30 years of lake level data from NOAA. So I will note that the use of elevation data is one of the ways that this data set differs from other maps of potentially restorable wetlands that we're aware of that are out there. We used available data from the NWI, the National Wetland Inventory, and the NOAA Coastal Change Analysis Program, CCAP data set, as well as wetland soils data from the Soil Survey geographic data sets. Our third parameter was a buffered national hydrographic data set, create flow lines where water would move on the landscape if it could. Fourth parameter, should be loading here, was buffered CARL, the conservation and recreational lands boundaries. And the fifth was an impervious surface layer derived from the National Land Cover data set. We pulled out non-impervious surface land use data from the NOAA CCAP data set for parameter 6. And these were the soft developed areas, which differed, again, from the impervious developed areas. So then finally, we masked out areas that we knew were too deep to be restored or too much energy, or were already active restoration projects. So these parameters were weighted and combined to create a composite restorability model that assigns a restorability index value for each pixel of the study area, which means that the results are a continuous surface that can be aggregated at whatever scale is most meaningful for the decision maker. It could be parcel, management area, county, whatever you might be most interested in. So let's take you back to this example from Lake Erie. Is this restorable? Well, the modeled restorability index values look like this. Indeed, it was identified as being quite restorable. So think of this like a heat map, where the darker green means more restorable based on the modeled results. We can then, within the system, zoom out to start to see how the parcel scale data and results fit within the surrounding parcels, and then pull back even farther to look at the larger Western Lake Erie landscape. So this same type of analysis was completed for all 3 geographies within the LCC pilot area. So with this model in place for Western Lake Erie and other geographies, we're asking some additional questions, like how much restorable coastal wetland is out there? Where is it? And then we also are thinking about using the model for wetland functions questions, such as nutrient, targeting things like nutrient processing at the landscape. Questions like how much phosphorus could be retained if X amount of coastal wetland is restored. Alternatively, how much wetland area is needed to achieve specific conservation objectives. So if this project continues to develop in a positive way, we'd like to continue to expand the work basin-wide to fully supplement the coastal wetland monitoring program. So this rainbow graphic at the bottom here shows the conceptual relationship between our restoration assessments and the monitoring program. Our analysis is helping prioritize the wetland restorations in the landscape, or the left-hand colorful part of this diagram here, from parking lots and impervious surfaces down through maybe diked wetlands, but not including the existing coastal wetlands. While the monitoring program tool that Matt's going to talk about shortly will cover those existing coastal wetlands and decisions associated with those. There we go. Finally, we work closely with the USGS Wisconsin Internet Mapping Group I mentioned earlier to create these mappers that allow users to interact with the data and connect via web services. So the landing page for the mappers are at the link identified here, and I'll come back to this, but I'll leave it on for just a second. So the next step up is to go through the live demonstration, but before I do, I'd like to ask, a question, and you can input the data into the question and answer pod or the chat box there. So the question is, are you aware of other data sets that might improve an analysis like this? So just think about that and share any suggestions you have, because we continue to work on this, continue to revise it, and advance the capabilities of the analysis. So with that, I am going to move on to the demonstration here. And let me check and make sure. There we go. Okay. All right. So again, the purpose of this demonstration is to give you an idea of the functionality of the tools that we created and see the data that go into them. So continuing to update them, please share any thoughts you have about improvements, data sets, some functionality that you would like to see included in this. We really appreciate any and all of that feedback, whether it be through this webinar or contacting me later on, or in my colleagues later on. I'll show you a way to do that too. So if you want to follow along, you can navigate to the Great Lakes Coastal Wetland Restoration Assessment landing page, which is up here at the glcwra.wim.usgs.gov. That should get you to this point. You're going to see a short background on the project and links to the 3 mappers that we have here as you scroll down. So one of the reasons we have individual mapper for each geography is that the input data for each geography are slightly different, and the stakeholders in each geography have varying needs that may not be met with a one-size-fits-all mapper. And also, the data are normalized by geography to maximize the interpretation of the analysis. This means that discrete restorability index values among the different geographies can't be compared directly. So the map interface is going to be the same for all 3 of these mappers that we currently have and any future that we develop, so there will be continuity among them. So when you click on the geography of choice, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the Western Lake Erie Restoration Assessment for this demo, you're going to load our ESRI ArcGIS-based mapper. So once you read and click through this opening message, which just reminds you that the data continue to be improved, you'll see the mapper and the data. Sometimes it takes a few seconds to load the data, depending on your internet connection. The surface, we've tested this out. The surface works well in Chrome and Firefox. I'm showing you this in Chrome right now, but not so well in Internet Explorer, at least not yet. So we're going to work on a pop-up that will suggest switching to using the tool in another browser if you open it in Internet Explorer. So let me familiarize you a bit with the common interface here. Across the top, you have several tabs, first being this About tab. Within the About tab, you have 5 sub-tabs across the top here. Defaults to opening up to About the application. This provides the basic high-level information about what this whole program and the tool is all about. The next tab here, Layer Information. This tells you what each layer is telling you, what it's highlighting, and the parameters that go into each data layer, making up the restorability index. And you can click on the link here right at the top to open up our science-based record to look at the metadata for each of these data layers. So I'm going to go back, close that browser here, go back here. And again, if you scroll down, you can see all the different parameters and the data sets that we link to get more information on. You have the Disclaimer tab next. Again, a reminder that the data and interface can continue to be improved. Contact information, so that as we improve things, we're able to hear from you get feedback to improve things. We encourage you to reach out and share your thoughts on these, as well as getting communication to go the other way with this Get Updated tab. So what this does, this allows you to add your name to a Fish and Wildlife Service supported server. It's going to be used to communicate when updates to the tools are available or are completed. So you can just click on the link right here in the middle, enter your basic information, and then whenever there are updates to the tools, we can send out a message, and then you can come back and visit and check them out. So I'm going to close this then. Continue with the blue tabs across the top. You have the Share tab here that allows the user to share the current map extent with somebody else quite easily. You have 2 options. You can generate a shortened bit.ly link. So this is just a short little link that you can copy and paste, put an email, get it to someone else, and they can see exactly what you're seeing at the same extent. Or you could look at a full link and copy it that way as well. Next up, we have the Print tab here, and the Print tab allows you to generate a PDF of the view currently in the mapper. So you just put in the name. I'm just going to say demo, and I'm going to go ahead and say print, and then it submits it to the server, and it produces back or sends back a PDF that you then click on to download and print or share however you choose. So it shows up right here. If I click on that, it opens up the, where'd it go? All right, well, I'm not sure what the browser's doing for me, but it's my PDF that I don't want to screw up the presentation here by pulling up the PDF. But you'll see, it's straightforward PDF, and you can do multiple print jobs here. You then copy and paste it or send it to whomever you choose to. And that works at whatever extent you might be looking at the time. Third tab over here, GeoSearch, a pretty powerful way to move around the data set. So this is ESRI-backed browser. So within the GeoSearch, you can search by place or coordinate. I'll just put in Toledo, Ohio, hit enter. Takes you right geographically, puts a nice little marker down there, so that's helpful. But it is calling on a data set that is much broader than that. So if I thought maybe I would see where Justin is down here in Sarasota, Florida, well, that's not so helpful within the mapper itself. Quick way to get back would be this home button over here. So you click the home button, brings you right back to that core extent, the base extent. So the GeoSearch is a pretty powerful way to move around the data set and find specific areas quickly that you might be interested in looking at. Another way to move around and get back to areas that you're interested in, say you zoom into a certain area and you come over here, over on the left-hand side, you see bookmarks. Do the drop down. We have an opportunity then you can create a bookmark, a geographic bookmark. I'm just clicking this button here, and I'll type in Erie, spelling it properly, save, and now you can see within your browser you now have Erie as a bookmark. We have a default as for Ottawa National Wildlife Refuge tab, so I click that, and it takes me right to the Ottawa National Wildlife extent. I could get back to Erie just by clicking that. So it's a quick way to move around areas that you want to get back to quickly. So there are a few more basic mapping features I want to share here, some that you're probably quite familiar with, but you have zoom in and zoom out here just by clicking these buttons. I'll click in, and then I'll drag and I'll pan over. You can also use the roller on your mouse, works pretty well. If you're mobile, you can click this button. So this is the Find My Location information. This works if you're on a mobile device and you have location services turned on. I'm at a desktop, so it won't work for me. But that could be useful if you're looking at this in the field. Let's scroll out, clean this up a little bit. We also have the measure tool. So you can measure area, length, distance, or location quite quickly. So I'm just going to, distance, and we'll say it's kilometers, and you just pick 2 points. Now the key is, I'm left-clicking, is you don't want to go too quickly. That's my tip for you, because you'll get ahead of the server. So then it tells you what you're up here at the top. I'll double-click to end that, 8.4 kilometers. And you can change units if you want to clear it. You just click it off. But it's a quick way to make some measurements of area or distance, whatever you might be interested in. Final note here on the general functionality, if you go over on the left-hand side, you have base maps. Click that down. A number of different base maps you can pull up. I find that satellite is satellite and gray are the two that are most useful, but of course you can pick whichever one helps you the most. On the upper right-hand corner here, we have the legend. This is the data key that corresponds to the active data layers in the view. So as you click layers on and off, it's highlighted there, so that's helpful. Now, let's round things out here by pointing out the map layers on the left-hand side. This is where the meat really is of the data that we have. We have several different layers, all clickable on and off. Most have this hover over the top of this black and white circle. This is the opacity values. You can take and increase the opaqueness of your data set just by dragging that back and forth. And then some of these other ones have alternatives to zoom, help you zoom in and out to those particular layers. The composite index, this first one at the top, I'm clicking on and off here. This is the one I'm going to drag down here. There's a little more to look at. Zoom in just a little bit. This is the core data set we created. This is Think about the darkest green areas are those that had the highest restorability score based on our analysis, again, within each geography. So the darkest areas might be those areas you look at first as potential restoration sites. So below that on the left-hand side, you have this parameters, several different, I'm going to turn off the land parcels for just a moment, clean this up. We have the water mask, the layer P0, you can turn on and off. We have the hydro period. Again, this is based on elevation and water levels over the last 30 years. You can see water might be on the landscape. The wetland soils, either they are or they're not. The flow lines, so these are the NHD flow lines. The buffered conservation and recreation lands data set. Impervious surfaces, and then the land use, or those soft land uses that we identified. So these layers can be really useful if you find anomalies in the composite index and wonder why. Why would it do something like that? Well, you can look through these different layers to see if the input data sets had something odd going on with them that might create what you're seeing in the composite index. So below the parameters here, we have this reference section, and these are all layers that we link to. These are services or other layers that we've brought in. So we have the study area boundary. We have land parcels in Ohio here, public available parcel data that I'm going to zoom out. Notice it disappears because it's scale sensitive, scale dependent to make it more reasonable when it comes on. So that could be useful to you. We also have, click that off, I'll click on oblique aerial imagery. You'll see these dots appear. So each one of these dots are a location where the Corps of Engineers data set of oblique aerial imagery. So I just clicked on that dot. Hopefully you're seeing the picture upload of outside Crane Creek, the mouth of Crane Creek. So that's pretty useful to get an idea of what the shoreline looks like for a particular area if you're not familiar with it. Over on the left side again, then we have the GLRI restoration areas as of September 2016 that we were able to identify, pull those out. And then this is a good link here. This is the wetland biological integrity data set. And so this is the discrete tie to the data that Matt's going to be talking about next. And so let me close out the Corps of Engineers. I'm going to zoom down here. What this biological integrity data set created was, I'll turn off the index just so you can see it. We'll work on the symbology a little bit, but you have gray dots that appear. So there's a gray dot right here in the middle of your screen. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. And that gray dot, if I click on it, it then brings up some queries and gives up some very basic data, like the veg index of biotic integrity value for this particular site, and then provides you a link to get to the data that Matt's going to talk about. So this is helpful for you to know as you're looking at maybe potential coastal wetlands to make a decision. And this is one way that you can quickly identify some of the available data that are out there for coastal wetlands and get over to those data. So the last three I'm going to show you here are the hydrologic conditioning section here. We have culverts. I'm going to go back to the mapper and zoom out just a little bit. Hopefully you can see that. So we have dots now have appeared. These are culverts that were identified from photo interpretation analysis. We have degree flow lines. So these are the flow lines that have been attributed based on the number of connections to the lake or to the tributary. And then we also have a dikes layer that was created, derived from LIDAR data, and looked at elevation differences to pull out a basic characterization of where earthen berms are within the landscape. Final functionality I'm going to show you here, closed base maps, I'm on the left-hand side here, is this area summary tool. And this allows you to really query the data itself. And we'll be building this out a whole lot with time. But right now you're able to query the restorability index values in a couple different ways. The first is a custom area. So if I clicked on that button, come over and pick your custom area, I'm left-clicking. And again, fairly slowly, making vertices around this parcel in Ottawa. I'll double-click. You can see now it's highlighted. Calculate statistics button. And then it spits out the mean and some basic statistics for those index values. You can select multiple areas that way if you choose. You can also select parcels directly. So I clicked on the select parcel. Actually, I'm going to clear first, and then selecting parcels. And if I just click anywhere in the map, that's what the parcel data look like. I can select multiples, and then hit the display statistics. And again, it brings up the data for each of those individual parcels and clear your selection there. So this summarizes the basic functionality of the mapper and the data that we're serving through. I'm going to pull back to the broad extent here. And the data that we're looking through. So I'm going to finish with another question for you. Hopefully it'll pop up there. And this is meant to just elicit some ideas from you about the specific restoration questions that a tool like this might help you with. An example, what parcel in Western Lake Erie has the highest restorability index value per acre? Something like that. It's just an example to get you thinking. But we're very interested in hearing now, after seeing what this might be able to do, the kinds of questions that are prompted, and then we can respond to those and hopefully create some functionality that supports that as well. So with that, Dave, I'm going to pass the control back to you at this point.
Great. Thanks a bunch, Kurt. Yeah, fascinating stuff. We have a number of questions here. So Kurt, stay on, and we'll kind of step through a few of those questions. And just a reminder, there's a question pod there. If you have questions that you want to, we'd like you, Kurt ended there with a question, so please take the time to add to Kurt's a question there. Also, if you have a kind of broader questions that you'd like to ask, please jump in on the other Q&A pod, and we'll work through those. So first one is how was the initial pilot area from Saginaw Bay to Western Lake Erie chosen?
Yeah, that's a good question. That is goes back to the pilot area for the LCC landscape conservation design process. And so there's information on the webpage about that process, but as part of what the coastal working group decided was a manageable area, existing data sets existed and contained a number of, again, existing data sets, and were a high priority for some of the agencies and stakeholders involved. So it was a manageable landscape to target to work through the issues of sorting out the direction and what types of tools might be most useful to implement the LCD process. So the mapper was then created to help to work with data that support that geography to start with.
Okay. Let me read this question. Are there plans to develop regional mappers for other parts of the Great Lakes? In Lake Superior, protection is as, if not more important than restoration. Any plans to modify the mapper to prioritize protection actions?
Yeah, fantastic question. The intent of this is to, as it makes sense, to make this a basin-wide analysis. So we have these three geographies done now, but when I mentioned in the title early on, the transferable part is that we have an architecture now that it would be relatively easy to transfer to other geographies. And we're already in discussions with the folks in the Green Bay region to apply to hit that third bay to provide a similar type of analysis in that area to supplement the good work that's going on there. And then beyond that, it's discussions with Superior or elsewhere, including the Canadian side, to figure out where it makes the most sense to do something like this, and then what type of data could be derived to help with the key decisions that are being made on the landscape. So I'm very interested in details of specific areas if people have ideas. So whomever asked that question, if you'd make sure that's included in the questions or chat or reach out to me later, I'd be interested in talking about that.
Okay. Another question. What is the resolution of the data?
Yeah, great question. So we had the input data sets. Again, we didn't collect our own data, so we used data that we pulled in of varying resolutions. So the highest resolution data set were the hydro period data from the LiDAR, and that was 1 meter spatial resolution. But then most of the data sets were at 10 meters. And then the impervious surfaces from the NLCD and the CCAP data were at 30 meter. So the viewer, you'll see those pixels are 10 meter pixels.
Yeah, okay. Good. We've got just another minute. Kurt, anything you wanted to add that based on the questions or anything further before we move on?
Nothing comes to mind.
Okay. Good. Let's see. So, yeah, thanks a bunch. We will have a little bit of time after at Matthew's presentation. If you have additional questions that you want to come back to Kurt, don't hesitate to put those into the Q&A pod that you see there. So, as I mentioned, next we'll have a demonstration of the coastal wetland prioritization tool. Matthew Cooper will be presenting that. Matthew's a research scientist at Northland College, and he'll talk about how the tool was developed and show what it can do through some specific examples. So, Matthew, I'll pitch it over to you.
All right. Well, thanks, Dave, and thanks everyone for spending some time with us today to talk about these new tools. So I'll start with this map that I have up currently. So this is all the major coastal wetlands on the Great Lakes. These happen to be wetlands that are connected to the lakes by surface water and greater than 4 hectares, and so these are wetlands that are part of our basin-wide monitoring program. But I put this up there just to give everyone a sense of how many wetlands we're talking about. And a challenge that the management community often faces is where to invest resources. As we go after resources to do the good work that we're all involved in, oftentimes it comes down to having to prioritize, having to identify those wetlands that will give us the biggest return on investment. And that's those are difficult decisions to make, and so our goal is to apply as much data as possible to those decisions. And so for the tool that our group focused on, or that our group developed, we're looking at wetlands that exist on the landscape. So Kurt gave us a great overview of potentially restorable areas. Now we're going to shift gears and talk about those wetlands that exist currently on the landscape. Our project team includes Don Uzarski from Central Michigan University, Todd Redder from Limnotech, and Valerie Brady and Lucinda Johnson from the Natural Resources Research Institute at University of Minnesota Duluth. We're working together on this particular element of this particular project for a couple of years now, and we're excited to roll out this phase of the tool. Just to start with, the URL that is at the top of the screen is how you navigate to the decision support tool. I'll leave that up for a couple of slides so everybody has that handy. But just a bit of overview before we jump right into a demonstration. Some primary functions of the decision support tool include data visualization and data delivery. So this is how you can see not only wetland monitoring program data, but some other data sources that I'll show you in a minute. And then prioritization for restoration, protection, and management. So there's tools built in to the site that allows you to prioritize and sift through all those wetlands that I just had up on the screen to make decisions on where to invest. Flexibility in our decision support tool, we identified as important right from the beginning. We recognize that conservation goals and conservation programs and restoration programs are very diverse. Different programs have different focus areas. We're not attempting to build a sort of a one-size-fits-all prioritization that we turn over and tell people this is where you should work. We wanted to build a tool that's flexible. People can build custom prioritization schemes to come up with their best answer. The decision support tool uses coastal wetland monitoring program data, and so the coastal wetland monitoring program is the basin-wide monitoring program funded by US EPA through the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. So we're making use of those data. Some priorities in the development of the decision support tool include long-term sustainability. We've housed the decision support tool on a dedicated server with a plan for long-term housing there. We use an open source platform, so we don't have to worry about updating licenses and that sort of thing. And then we're 100% web-based. So once you get into the tool and start using it, you'll find there's nothing to download. Everything happens in your browser. So version control and all those sorts of things we handle on our end, and as soon as you use it, you're getting the most up-to-date version of not only the tool but also the data behind it. And then the linkage between this decision support tool and the Coastal Wetland Monitoring Program includes both the data. Data from the monitoring program are used in the decision support tool. But just as important to that is the linkage among the personnel. So you saw the project team that I had up there. These are all folks that are also investigators on the monitoring program. And so we have that tight linkage between the two projects, the two programs, which will help us to keep the decision support tool up to date and functioning well into the future, and allow us to expand it as we move forward. Another priority for us was engagement with prospective users. You know, we're not the wetland managers. We're the researchers, and so we went out and asked for feedback and input on, you know, what sort of a tool, what sort of data delivery makes the most sense. We got some great feedback from potential users, and you'll see when as I demonstrate the tool, I'm going to constantly come back to, we are looking for input. Now we have a product that we're rolling out. Folks can use it. We're going to continue to get that good feedback so that we can improve the system going forward. So user feedback has been key for us, and it will continue to be an important part of what we're doing. All right, so I want to jump right into a demo now. So I'm going to navigate. First, I'm going to go to a browser. I'm going to navigate to greatlakeswetlands.org/DST, and that will take you to the front page of the decision support tool. I'll note that greatlakeswetlands.org is the home page for the Wetland Monitoring Program. So many of you have been on there and you've used that page. So adding DST gets you to the decision support tool. All right, so here I'm using, you'll notice I'm using Google Chrome as my browser. We've thoroughly tested the tool on Chrome, Firefox, and Internet Explorer, and it works fine in all three. Chrome is my preferred browser. Internet Explorer works fine. We noticed that there's a couple little things with Explorer. Some maps don't render quite as well, but full functionality is possible on all three of those browsers. All right, so this is sort of the front door to the tool. This user agreement pops up. This includes not only the user agreement, but some basic information on the tool itself. So the first time you navigate here, it would make sense to kind of skim through this and see what's there. And hit agree here to get in. All right, so now you're looking at the front page of the decision support tool. And now we have the option of either continuing on as a guest or logging in. So as a guest, you have access to most of the tool, or most of the functions of the tool. However, you will not be able to save a scenario or download data. But we wanted to give folks the option of just jumping on here and seeing what was involved and playing around with the scenario, so then you can determine if it makes sense to go ahead and request an account. All right, so I'm going to log in. Actually, let me, that account request thing here. So if you, at the top of the screen here, you see request account. If you hit that, it takes you to the account request page back on the Wetland Monitoring Program site. And you can see, you just fill in these boxes here, submit the request, and that alerts us as project managers that a new request has come in. We review that information and process it accordingly. Just a note here, this box, what level of access are you requesting? DST at the top here is Decision Support Tool, so that's what you would request in this case. All right, so I have an account, so I'm going to go ahead and log in. My information was saved in there. Chrome saved it for me, so I'm going to log in. Now I'm logged in, and I need to navigate back to the Decision Support Tool. So under Mapping Tools, hit Decision Support Tool. Loading up here. Again, this is our front door, so anytime you leave the Decision Support Tool page and come back, you'll see that and you'll agree. And now we're in. So I'm just going to kind of orient you to this main page here, and then we'll jump into a scenario. So the left-hand panel is some of our mapping functions, and this is stuff that you should recognize from other tools that are out there. map navigation, for example, is you can look at the entire map, or you can zoom to a particular site. Once you get using the tool, there may be a particular site that you end up coming back to. That's a handy way to do that. We have a variety of base maps available, and then these are overlays that you can put over top of the map. We'll come back to those after we do a scenario. This middle panel here that says Decision Support Tools, here's where you're going to actually build a scenario. So this is sort of the area that you're going to use to do the what we call filtering and ranking. So basically to build your scenario to come up with your set of wetlands to focus on. And then the map will always occupy the right-hand side of the screen. All right, so looking at that map there, a couple things to point out. First of all, you'll notice the geography. So this is what we're calling the pilot area. This is our first, in this rollout of the decision support tool, this is the geography we focused on. It's the same geography that Kurt demonstrated. So we focused here because the LCC's landscape conservation design had this geography identified, and so we built a tool to be consistent with that area. The outline here is simply that is how we're identifying that geography. The wetland monitoring program, as you know, is basin-wide, and there's a basin-wide map tool with the monitoring program, but the decision support tool is just this current geography here. We have plans to, or we're in the process of expanding our decision support tool, so we have funding from the Michigan Coastal Program to cover Michigan wetlands, and then the LCC now has supported our work around the rest of Lake Michigan, so the western shore of Lake Michigan and the southern shore of Lake Michigan. So we'll be rolling those expansions out in 2017, so we're excited about that. The symbols you currently see on the map, these are the centroids of coastal wetlands in this geography that meet criteria of the Coastal Wetland Monitoring Program. So these are the wetlands that are in the decision support tool. So these are coastal wetlands that are connected to the Great Lakes and greater than 4 hectares in area. So the major coastal wetlands in the geography here. Okay, so now I want to jump into a prioritization scenario and kind of show you how that works. So remember, those controls are all contained in this middle window here. So the first one, the first decision to make here is, do we want to create a new scenario or pull up one of our old ones? So I have one previous one in there. So I'm logged in as myself here. I'm going to create a new one for this demo here. Let's call it webinar test. Go ahead and submit that. So that starts this scenario, and it's going to save. Anything I do here will be saved, and I can come back to it. Okay, so my next step then is to select an area, an extent on the map. So I could select this entire geography if I wanted to build a prioritization for all these wetlands. Most cases, though, we work in smaller geography. So I'm going to build just a hypothetical one here, and I'm going to say, I'll say all of Western Lake Erie as an example. So I highlight Western Lake Erie. All right, so now I've subset the geography into just this area to focus on here. All right, so that's my first step. Now next I want to get into the way that we do this prioritization. So two basic steps. One is to filter and one is to rank. So the filtering step is we want to subset this population of wetlands we have into only those that meet whatever criteria we say we are interested in. So that's the filtering step. And the next step is of those that make it through our filters, of those wetlands that meet our criteria, we can rank them by another set of attributes if we choose. All right, so let's do some filtering here. So we open up this menu. And now we can select filters. And so if I expand this list here, so lake is in there currently, so that's Great Lake, but let's expand that. All right, now this opens up our full set of attributes. So all of these things you see are variables or data associated with each of the wetlands in the system. We're at 94 currently with plans to add more. So just give you a general sense of what's there. So there's some general information there. The area of the wetlands, percent open water, access, those sorts of things. There's ownership and management, so how much federal area, state area, et cetera, within each of those wetland polygons. Calculated a lot of land use metrics around the wetlands, some population information. Towards the bottom of this list, we get into the wetland monitoring data. So some biology there, the fish IBI score, for example, and then we get down into some water quality. So you get a sense of what's there in terms of attributes. All right, so we're in the filtering area right now. The ranking attributes are similar. Now, a lot of these may not be readily evident to you. So if you just want a little more information here, for example, what's this Y perch CPUE? If you simply float your cursor over any of those attributes, you get a slightly longer description. That's yellow perch catch per unit effort. That comes from the monitoring program, and you can do that throughout. So vegetation IBI, the wetland monitoring program, vegetation IBI score. So it gives you a little more information on each of those attributes. If that's not enough, if you'd like more detail, you jump right up here and click on this documentation tab, and there's some resources there to give you even more information on each of those attributes. I apologize there. I just restarted my scenario. No big deal. So get us right back to where we were. Okay, so let's go ahead and build a hypothetical scenario. So kind of off the top of my head, I thought, what's a realistic scenario that folks may be interested in that we could use as an example. So let's pretend we're working with a program with the state of Michigan. So we're gonna constrain ourselves to the state of Michigan. We're gonna focus on wetlands that have some state ownership, so state-owned wetlands, and then we may be interested in access. So let's say we're looking at state-owned wetlands with road access, and then we're interested in fish habitat, so we can use the fish IBI scores, and then we're interested in finding those wetlands with a high dense human population in the area. So first of all, let's subset these Western Lake Erie wetlands first into just those in Michigan. So our first filter then will be state. So I'm going to click state. I'm going to add that filter. The menu here, we're going to select Michigan. Okay, I'm going to apply that filter. So if you watch the map as I hit apply, you see now we're just in the state of Michigan. So that was the first subsetting here. All right, now remember we are interested in wetlands that have some state ownership. So I'm going to say percent state. Add that filter. You can see the slider bar here for percent state ownership. Let's say any amount will count for this scenario, so 1 to 100%. Watch the map. Hit apply. All right, so now these wetlands are in Michigan with some state ownership. Right, and then road access was another thing for this hypothetical example. So let's say access options. I'm going to add that filter. Look at our options here. Select, see boat, overland, road, and ferry. So we want road access for this example. So we're going to check the box for road. I'm going to apply that filter. Watch the map. Like a couple more dropped off. So now we have this set of wetlands in our geography of interest with some state ownership, and you can access them all by roads. And so for a lot of scenarios, this might be good enough. It looks like there's 8 or so on the map. We may be ready to move forward, download the data from those wetlands, and say, here's the whatever, 8 wetlands in this case that we're interested in, and move forward. For this example, remember that we were interested in fish habitat. So we want to now look at fish communities or fish IBI scores, what we could use, and also human population density. Now we're going to move down to ranking attributes. Open up that menu there. Now we could rank by the attributes as well. So let's move down here to, first, let's go with a fish index of biotic integrity score. Add that rank. I'm going to hit apply rank here. I'm going to rank from highest IBI score to lowest. I'm going to hit apply rank, and if you watch the map, now these wetlands are color-coded by IBI score on a relative scale here. And you can see the legend pops up on the left. You can see the color coding there for IBI score. All right, and then we were also interested in surrounding population density, so let's remove that fish IBI score. We'll cruise down here to land use. There's population density. So let's say population density, people per hectare within 5 kilometers, 5-kilometer buffer. And add that rank. Now if you watch the map, you'll see the rankings changed. See the couple of wetlands around Monroe there have a really high human population density. So you can see in this example, we chose 2 different attributes to rank by and got some information from those. Either one of those may be something you're interested in and you can move forward. However, if you're building a scenario where multiple ranking attributes are of interest and you want to combine those, we can start layering up the ranking attributes. So we have elite population density on there, and let's add our IBI scores there as well for an example. So we apply those ranks together, and now we've built a scenario where human population density and fish IBI score both contribute to the ranking. You can see on our legend on the left here, we have a normalized score because those variables were combined. So it combines those 2 attributes. Anytime you combine multiple attributes into a ranking, they're always evenly weighted. We have not built in yet a way to apply weights to those, but they're evenly weighted there. Okay, so now you get a sense of how to do the filtering, the ranking. Now let's retrieve data. So I'm going to go ahead and remove one of those rankings. I'm going to reapply the ranks. So now we're looking at this scenario ranked by fish IBI score. So the first way to look at results, besides just looking at the map here, go down to filtering ranking results. Hit that. You have some options here. We're going to view site listing. What pops up here is the results of our scenario. These are the wetlands that were included, and you can see fish IBI scores included there. For non-logged in users, this is as far as you can get. You have some results on the screen there, and those are available. But for logged in users, we can go ahead and export to Excel. If we export, what pops up here is a menu that allows us to select what information, which attributes we want included in our report. You can see it's the full set of attributes there, everything we looked at in the previous menus. And we can either select all those or decide what we want. Let's go ahead and just say we want all that. So select all the boxes get checked. Hit OK. You can see a zip file downloaded automatically through the browser. We open that up. We have an Excel file here. We open that. And here's an Excel file with the data that we just used, we just looked at. So some basic information on the first tab in the README. You can see that this particular download has a timestamp of just a minute ago, 13:03 there. And then you can see this timestamp on line 2 shows that the attribute data set, so the data behind all of this, the timestamp on that was December 12th, so just last week. You can keep track of which version of the data behind it were used. All right, so here's some basic information on the scenario that we just ran. And if we kind of scroll through these tabs here, you can see the results of our scenario, and then the site attributes are the actual data that we selected for download. So each site is a column. You can see the site number and name, flat and long, etc. So that's all there. Okay, I'm going to go back to my browser now and show you a couple more features here. So here's our results of our scenario. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at some of those. We've zoomed in just on a couple of wetlands that were in our results. Now I want to show what some of the mapping features are. So you may run a scenario, get a result, and now you want to explore a little deeper on the map. So let's see. One thing I generally do is I switch to an aerial image. I just like to see what's on the landscape. Hold up a Bing aerial here. And then the centroids were helpful when I was looking at the entire geography, but now I want to see where those polygons are. These are the wetland polygons that come from the Great Lakes Coastal Wetlands inventory. You can see those polygons there in blue, and I can actually, if I simply hit apply ranks again, it now color codes those polygon boundaries too, so you can see the boundaries are now color-coded as well. All right, so let's zoom back into area here. So these are wetlands near Monroe, Michigan. Other things available as map overlays are on the left here. You can see this list. So these are not part of the prioritization that we just did. These are just overlays to help you interpret what's going on in the landscape. So some things there. We pulled in the oblique aerial imagery, similarly to the system that Kurt just demonstrated. So these are from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Click on one of those cameras there. Pulling this is not on our server. This is pulling it from the source data, and then you can see the image of or that particular image of the area. And everywhere there's a little camera, there's an oblique image. So that may be helpful to get another perspective on the region that you're looking at. All right, now the two features here, the hydrologic disconnections and the dike features, these are being pulled directly from the system that Kurt just demonstrated. So here's another way that our two projects are linking to one another. So this hydrologic disconnections, these are the flow lines. These are the flow lines that are attributed with the number of hydrologic disconnections from the Great Lake, in this case, Lake Erie. So every time the color changes on one of these flow lines, there's some sort of a hydrologic disconnection or constriction that's artificial, so generally a culvert or something of that nature. So we pulled this in from the system that Kurt just demonstrated. Similarly, we have a dike feature layer also being pulled in from that system. So these are the LiDAR generated. This is the LiDAR generated dike feature, and you can see quite a number of dikes in this particular region here. That's being pulled in. We're showing public and conservation lands. So a lot of this is the CARL database from Ducks Unlimited. We've combined a couple other sources there just to kind of fill out that public lands and conservation lands data set. But you can see a bit of that land in our region we're looking at here. If we click on this, I believe it's Sterling. Yeah, this is Sterling State Park, and you can see who manages that, et cetera. You can click around here. So another park here, Monroe Township Sports Facility. So it may be helpful as you're looking at, if you're exploring a wetland, to know what public land is already part of that geography. We've pulled in the Phragmites layer from Michigan Tech and USGS as a layer, again, just to provide additional context. We have we pulled in the 2011 NLCD National Land Cover database, again, just to provide some additional context there to the wetlands that are part of your scenario. So these overlays here are all designed to provide additional context for any wetland that you're looking at as part of a scenario. And so here I'm going to make my plea for feedback. So I've shown you the features of the decision support tool as it stands now. These attribute sets here We've built a system where we can add to these attributes quite easily. If we can generate the data associated with each wetland, we can add attributes, and that's a pretty straightforward addition on our end. These overlays here, as we pull these in as map overlays, as services we're pulling in, we can add additional ones quite easily. So here's where we need the feedback as we roll this out. So we need folks to tell us, what we're missing and what we could do to improve the system. If you go to contact, the contact tab here, my email's there, and that's probably the easiest way to give feedback is to just contact me directly. So I know that was a fairly quick introduction. There's a lot of attributes that we didn't look at yet, and you may be saying, the scenario that I ran with the state ownership and the road access and ranking by fish, IBI, for example, doesn't apply to me, doesn't apply to my program. How could this be useful? I would invite you to go ahead and go into the system and pull open this attribute set and start playing with it and start color coding wetlands by a variety of different attributes. And there may be something in there that is useful to you. And if not, and if you have ideas for ways that we could expand it, please send those on to us. Okay, so now I'm going to switch back here to wrap things up. As I mentioned, this is our first iteration. We're expanding throughout the state of Michigan and then around the Lake Michigan shoreline next year. So by the middle of 2017, you'll see those expansions. And we're always looking for feedback from users. With that, I want to thank, first of all, the project team. That we've worked well together, and we're excited to roll this iteration of the Decision Support Tool out. We want to thank the Upper Midwest and Great Lakes LCC for support, and thank EPA and the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative for supporting the monitoring program. With that, we'll wrap it up, and we'll switch to taking questions.
Thank you, Matthew. This is Dave Case again. Yeah, great stuff. So to finish up here, a couple different things. If you have questions, additional questions, a number of people have been submitting questions. You can submit those in the Q&A pod while we're answering some of the existing questions. And then, so we'll go through some questions, and we want to finish up with an evaluation of the webinar. So we really appreciate you taking the time to provide that evaluation, and we'll make sure we're done prior to the 1:30, the end time. So with that, and I'm not necessarily sure exactly if it should be Matthew or Kurt to answer the question. I'll let you guys figure that out as we jump into it. I think these first few are primarily for Matthew. But the first one is there a way to export the results out of the CWDST after running various scenarios?
Yeah, so in terms of the data that are in the scenario, so the sites, their ranking, the attributes that went into that scenario, and then any other attributes of interest, that Excel download is the way to go ahead and export that directly. And once you have that file, then it's on your local machine. If the question is related to the map outputs, as outputting that as a geospatial data file of some kind, we do not have that in there currently. So the export on that for the visualization would simply be doing a screen capture on your own end. But the data, the attributes that go into a scenario, yeah, that's what's contained in the Excel file.
Okay, good. Will the data in this tool be up, and then I've got a couple follow-up questions, but will the data in this tool be updated with new information?
Yep, that's a great question. So I had to decide what to include and what not to include, but what I really wanted to show off was the way that we manage the decision support tool on our end as project managers. And so Todd Ryder at Limnotech has built an attribute upload tool. So basically all those data and attributes that are behind this thing, they all come from a simple database. It's actually an Excel sheet on our end, and we update that and simply upload it into the system, and then everybody has access to the most up-to-date information. So we've sort of built that in to make updating simple on our end as project managers. So the easiest example of that is as the wetland monitoring program rolls forward, we collect additional data every year, the IBI scores or the other monitoring data will be updated. And so this is going to be a living system that we can continue to update. As folks give us feedback on other attributes, for example, some geospatial we don't have in there yet, we can easily update that too, as long as we can do the geospatial work to generate those attributes, add it to the database, and upload it. So yeah, we right from the beginning, our goal was to design a system that we could update easily. We could do that on our end as project managers without having to go back to the web designers every time we want to do an update.
Yeah, and so kind of related to that, then maybe, and you perhaps embedded in there was the answer, but if it sounds like it obviously is going to be updated, but how often, and related to that, will it be how will people know when there's new data that's been added?
Yeah, that's a great question. So on the sort of I'll answer the second part of that first. At this point, to follow whether or which attribute data set you've used and you're looking at, it's that timestamp on the download. That first README page of the Excel file that you download has the timestamp to sort of control versions of the data that are behind it. In terms of how often things will be updated, for the wetland monitoring program data, as soon as we've collected those data, processed them, gone through our extensive QA that we have on our end, then they'll be updated on the monitoring program system as well as the decision support tool section. So usually by the time we go through all of our QA steps, it's the fall following the year that we collected those data. So data that we collected summer of 2016, by fall of 2017, we're pretty well ready to roll on releasing those data.
Okay, great. So this, again, maybe for Matt or Kurt, is there nearshore data available, SAV, substrate, et cetera?
Matt, I'll take that one first, I guess. This is Kurt. We did not use those data sets primarily because they're quite difficult to get, and I think they're spotty. I was thinking about data sets that I am aware of that are beyond maybe statewide data sets. I think Ohio does have some sediment data sets, but basin-wide, I first think of the Great Lakes Aquatic Habitat Framework, the GLAF, GLAHF.org, as one site that you might go to see what broader data are available for soils or SAV or others. There's additional work going on with the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement and the annexes, and annex focused on habitat. I think it's 7 focused on habitat and species, so data sets associated with answering the questions about changes through time get at that in the nearshore and the inshore and onshore. So they're difficult data to get, and we certainly didn't use them in our analysis.
Okay. Are you planning to add, next question, are you planning to add amphibian and bird data?
Yes, Matt, it sounds like that one's directed at me. Yes, we certainly are. And in addition to bird and amphibian data, there's other variables that we have and we can pull out of our monitoring program data, and we'll continue to do that. That's going to be part of our process of sifting through the data we have and the data folks are interested in, and making sure that what we offer is of use. And so the bird and amphibian data is right on the top of our list for how we roll forward.
Okay. Are there plans to even more closely integrate the two tools?
Yes, I was waiting for Kurt to
Sorry.
in there, and I guess I'll start, and Kurt, you follow up. So we are as projects and sort of the project teams behind each of these, we're very interested in how we can integrate, and part of that's a lot of that's the technical side of sort of how we make these systems talk to each other and how they're presented. And that's obviously something that's solvable. And then we're doing a lot of thinking about how best to deliver this not in a technical sense, but in a way that allows folks to most easily see how they talk to each other and how they communicate with each other. So those conversations are definitely happening, and I look forward to how we can do that.
Yeah, I'll add to that. The pause on my end was only because I had mute on, and so don't count on me for technology. Now, I think that's a great question, and we've talked about this a fair amount, and a lot of it will be driven by, I think, the user group, by the stakeholders, and by you folks about how much integration there needs to be within one geospatial framework, or if bouncing between two different tools that do different things and help you answer different questions is adequate. So I would encourage feedback, I guess, at that level for us to kind of figure out how much to invest in the geospatial side and the mappers of integrating them versus just building off the natural ties that on the landscape from coastal wetlands to the potential.
Okay, great. I've got time just for a couple more questions before we move to the evaluation, but let me read this. It looks like the GLCWRA that every road crossing is being considered a barrier to hydrologic connection. That is not the case. So how is that going to be corrected?
Yeah, maybe I misspoke a little bit. They're not considered barriers to hydrologic connection. It's just recognition that each restriction or narrowing is more difficult for water to move through, and as water moves through different channels, it's less easy and takes more time for SACE-driven water level changes to be conveyed back into an area that's, say, 4 culverts back. It certainly would get there, water moves through very well, but we have to recognize that there's delays there, and so that could go into the planning for restoration and just deciding among different sites.
Great, yeah, good clarification. Finally, kind of last question to both presenters. Are you looking to add more partners to your development team for future improvements to the tools? And in other words, how could my organization assist or be involved?
I'd start by reaching out. Yeah, let's have a discussion about that. I'm certainly interested in learning more about what other ideas people have, and the bottom line is we want to end up with products that are valuable and people use and are customized to the questions being answered on the landscape.
Yep, and I would echo that. The best way is to get in touch with us and first of all give us feedback, let us know how things are going and what additional data you might be interested in, and we start from there. I mean, one of the great things about the wetland monitoring program for us is that we've worked with such a diverse group of stakeholders, folks from state and federal agencies down to very local resource managers and stakeholders, and it's been a great way to build partnerships, and so we look forward to more of that in the future.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much. We're going to pop up these evaluation questions on the screen, and if folks could just take the time, they're pretty self-explanatory. The results won't show, so you'll see that you answered the question, but they won't show on the screen. One question while folks are doing that, the one kind of final question, and this may go back, Kurt, to your presentation. Are there plans to transfer or build out the tool for Lake Superior? And would that help prioritize efforts to protect wetlands in the Lake Superior Basin?
Yeah, I guess I will reply similarly to what I did before, in that we are thinking of this as a basin-wide effort ultimately, with customizations to address the needs of the different geographies and the questions that people are asking, because we've already learned that they vary by geography. So I think the tools that we have and the approach that we have has a solid foundation and has great ability. It's pretty easy to adapt to whatever the needs might be, whether it be more focused on a different type of wetland system, a different geomorphic type, or more restoration or enhancement or protection or something versus restoration. So I think the opportunity is certainly there given the frameworks that we've built out so far.
Excellent. Yeah, well, so thanks, Matthew and Kurt. I mean, great presentations. Boy, you covered a lot of territory in a short amount of time. We sure appreciate everybody taking the time to be on the call. Lots of good information. You'll be all receiving follow-up information on how you can access the recording, which, as I mentioned before, you can all use and forward as needed. I'd like to invite you to check back to the Coastal Conservation Working Group page on the Upper Midwest and Great Lakes LCC site. As I mentioned, that's the place to get information. And just as importantly, if you haven't already, I invite you to sign up and receive emails from the working group. And again, you can do that at the Great Lakes LCC.org site. So on behalf of the Coastal Conservation Working Group, as well as everyone involved in putting together these tools, thanks again for taking the time. We sure encourage you to take advantage of these tools, and you'll be hearing a lot more about those. So thanks, everybody, and go ahead. We'll keep it open for a few minutes so that you can go ahead and fill in the tools or the evaluation question, but otherwise we'll close it down. Thanks, everybody.